Ed Sniffen with the Department of Transportation Highways Division. Thank you very much for joining us tonight for the 13th of 14 statewide meetings we're having on our Hawaii Road Usage Charge Demonstration Project. Really appreciate you joining us. I know there's a lot of better things to do on your evenings than to join another meeting. But we're hoping that this first ever online community meeting will make it a little more easy for you to join us. Tonight, we have a short 90-second video and a 15-minute presentation to talk about why the department feels it's important to look forward to this alternative fuel tax, alternative to the fuel tax to fund our roadways. But the biggest part of this meeting to make sure that we get the feedback from you. In our previous meetings, we've gotten tremendous feedback from the communities. We'd love it to continue, not only tonight, but throughout the project itself. So please listen to the presentation and join with us to give us the feedback we're going to need to guide our study and guide us going forward. Thank you. Donna?
Yeah, thanks again for coming. You know, I'd just like to suggest the presentation is going to be about 15 or so minutes. So if you're at home, I'd suggest getting out a piece of paper and a pen and maybe jotting down some notes as we're going along so you don't forget things that you might want to ask about or comment about. And you can send all your comments into contact@hiruc.org, the website there, see the URL you see on your page here. And we're going to have it on your screen as we go along so you don't have to rush to scribble it down right now. But do take some notes and give us your comments and input. We are really serious about hearing your reaction to it and clarifying any questions you might have. And we're going to have Travis kick us off here and do his presentation for you, and we can all learn more about the road usage charge.
Great. Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Ed. We're going to start tonight with a short video that's about 90 seconds. So, Donna, if you could help me. So it's a community discussion, and that's why we're here tonight. But you may be wondering, why are we having a community discussion just about a study? And the answer is, we want to have input from the community at the beginning of this process. By actively involving folks from different parts of the state, different stakeholder groups, we can understand your needs and your preferences about how we pay for our roads in the future. And so it's important that we get that input up front so that it can inform how we design this research process. So thanks again for taking your time tonight. And again, contact@hiruc.org if you want to email us your questions. In about 10 minutes, we're going to be transitioning into Q&A. So how do we currently pay for our roads in Hawaii? We found through our first 10 community meetings, first 12 community meetings, that a lot of folks aren't familiar with how roads are currently paid for. And the truth is we all contribute to how we pay for the upkeep of our roads and bridges in Hawaii. There's a vehicle weight tax that is paid every year when you renew your registration. About 29% of the state highway funds come from that vehicle weight tax. Another 16% comes from the $45 annual vehicle registration fee, and 19% of the state highway fund comes from car rental and tour vehicle surcharge. But the biggest component of state highway funding comes from a fuel tax, which is 16 cents per gallon. Every time you fuel up and you pay at the pump for your gas, 16 cents of every gallon you put in your car goes to the state highway fund to pay for the upkeep of our roads and bridges. That's an invisible tax, so you may not realize that you're paying it, but every time you go to the gas pump, let's say you put 10 gallons in your vehicle at $3.78 a gallon, you'll get a receipt and it says $37.80. But what it doesn't say is how much fuel tax you paid. And the breakdown that we have here shows for Hawaii, for City and County of Honolulu, there's a county fuel tax of 16.5 cents per gallon. Each county in the state has its own fuel tax rate that varies. But the state rate is 16 cents per gallon, and the federal fuel tax rate is 18.4 cents per gallon. So it's really important to understand the starting point of how we pay for our roads. It comes from the gas tax. 30% of the state highway fund comes from state gas tax of 16 cents per gallon. The challenge that we face is that as vehicles become more fuel efficient, more and more new cars especially are going to be paying less to use the roads because they're burning less gasoline, cars like this. Meanwhile, there will be fewer and fewer cars on the road, like older pickups. They're going to be paying more. So that's the challenge that we've identified that is informing this research program. The challenge is we're looking down the road 5, 10, 15 years, and we're seeing that the gas tax system is outdated. And as we achieve our state's energy goals, our road funding system will no longer be based on how much we use the roads. So one possibility for addressing that challenge is to consider changing to a pay-for-what-you-use system, or a mileage tax, or a road usage charge, where folks pay for how much they use the roads based on the miles they drive, instead of paying based on the number of gallons that they burn. But we don't want to pursue that solution until we understand from the communities here in Hawaii how it could work here. So we're inviting the community to help us design the system of the future. And the only way we can do that is by getting your input, what concerns you have, what questions about how it could work, so that we can understand your preferences and your ideas about how to pay for roads in the future. So this project is all about seeing if there's a solution, whether we can design a funding system for Hawaii that is fair, that achieves the stable funding that we have from the gas tax in the past in a way that is fair in the future. So before we get into how the project is going to actually proceed, a few questions that have come up at a lot of our community meetings. The first one is, well, how much is this going to cost me? So we wanted to explain, how does a road usage charge compare with the state gas tax? And we wanted to start that by reminding folks that if this policy were implemented, we're studying it as a replacement to the state gas tax. And today, that 16 cent per gallon state gas tax works out to about 3/4 of a penny per mile on average. So average car is paying in gas tax 3/4 of a penny each mile you drive. You may not think about it that way, but the gas tax kind of is a mileage tax. So 3/4 of a penny per mile, keep that in your mind, because that's the number that we're going to use to understand what the impacts will be through this research process. So how much would it cost? Well, if you're a typical Hawaii driver, your car gets 22 miles per gallon and you drive about 10,000 miles per year. So that means if you do the math, you're currently paying about $73 per year in state gas tax. Under a road usage charge, you would pay $73 per year. So there's no difference. So why are we studying this? Well, there are other vehicles. Not every vehicle in the state is typical. Take a Nissan Leaf, which is an electric car. A Nissan Leaf driven 10,000 miles currently pays nothing in gas tax. Under a road usage charge, conceptually would pay $73 to drive those 10,000 miles, which is an increase of $73. Meanwhile, a small sedan like a Toyota Prius, which is a hybrid, driven 10,000 miles, pays about $40 in state gas tax. Under road usage charge, just like the Leaf, would pay $73, which is an increase of $33. Meanwhile, an older pickup, like an older Ford F-150, is currently paying $94 in state gas tax to drive those 10,000 miles. And again, under a road usage charge, would pay the same as everybody else, $73, which means a decrease in $21. So you might be wondering, why would we cut a break to folks who are driving older, less fuel-efficient cars? And the reason is, the fleet of today has a lot more vehicles that look like that older pickup. The fleet of the future, however, is going to have a lot more cars that look like cleaner vehicles, higher fuel efficiency, electric cars, hybrid cars. Even new pickups today are getting higher than the statewide average of 22 miles per gallon. So the entire fleet is moving toward more fuel efficiency as we achieve our state's energy goals. And we're looking at this model to anticipate what the impact will be from that shift on the state's ability to fund highways. Other states have conducted trials. Oregon and Utah are the leaders right now in this topic. Oregon enacted a road usage charge in 2015, and Utah is going to be launching one on January 1st, 2020. At first, only as an opt-in system for electric and hybrid cars who can choose to pay by the mile instead of paying an extra annual registration fee. Other states like Washington, California, Colorado, Minnesota, and a few states on the East Coast have done trials and studies of road usage charging. So Hawaii is in a good position to learn from what other states have done. So what are we going to do here in Hawaii? This is what we wanted to leave you with before we go into Q&A. We're at the beginning of a 3-year research project. We're right here what we call the project inception. We're taking input at the beginning so that we can think about what types of questions we want to devote the research project resources into answering. We have 2 phases. First one is going to be a driving report phase. Many of you will begin receiving in the fall a driving statement based on the odometer reading that's taken at your annual vehicle inspection. In a later phase, we're going to be inviting up to 2,000 volunteers to participate on a voluntary basis with experimenting with new technologies that can be used to report miles driven. All throughout this entire process, we're taking input. So it's not just tonight, it's not just at the community meetings we've done in person around the state, it's throughout the next 2.5 years on our website, at our email, contact@hiruc.org, and at the project phone line. So please, if you're unable to ask questions tonight, or if you know folks who are interested in learning more, We want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to weigh in over the remaining 2.5 years of this research. To dig a little deeper into the driving statement, later this year, as you know, when you get your vehicle inspected, the odometer is red. So what we're going to be doing is preparing a customized statement for vehicles after the safety check that you'll receive in the mail. It will look something like this. This is a mock-up. The idea is to give folks a sense of how a road usage charge would affect you personally. But I want to stress, this is not a bill, so please do not try to pay it. We're not collecting money. We're interested in your feedback. There'll be a survey attached to this statement, and the survey will allow us to ask the questions and gauge what folks' preferences are and how a system like this could work. A second phase starting in 2020, where we'll invite up to 2,000 volunteers all across the state, will have a chance to test out new technologies. So if you don't want to report your miles and simulate what it would be like to pay a road usage charge at safety check, we have other possibilities. We're looking at smartphone apps, including smartphone apps where you can snap a photo of your odometer. There are devices that plug into newer vehicles built since 1996 that can count the miles driven and report it wirelessly, and even some new cars that have technology built in that can report the number of miles you drove without you having to do anything different than what you already do. So we're looking for volunteers to help us understand which of those methods works well for your personal situation, for folks in different communities around Hawaii. This is a really important opportunity for you to weigh in and tell us what works and what doesn't work. Because at the beginning of this research, there's a lot of choices to be made, and we need to understand what the views of the public are. So please, if you're interested in volunteering, you can signal your interest on the project website, HiRUC.org, or by sending us an email. A lot of questions remain. We've heard a lot at our community meetings around the state. We understand many of you have questions tonight. We invite those questions, we invite those concerns. Just a few examples. We've been all around the state. We started here on Oahu. We went to Kauai, Maui, Molokai, Lanai, and Big Island. We have one more meeting remaining after tonight's online meeting, and that's on May 9th in Hilo. So folks on the east side of the Big Island, if you didn't have a chance to come out to our meetings in Waimea and Kona, May 9th in Hilo, and the information about the time and location of that meeting is on the project website, HiRUC.org. So this is an opportunity for folks to shape how we will pay for our roads and bridges in a future without the gas tax. So I'd like to pass it back to Donna to get us started on the Q&A.
Thanks, Travis. So again, thank you very much for sending your comments into contacts at HiRUC.org. We'll be collecting the comments and questions, and I'll be reading them, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. In some cases, if we're not able to give you a response to a question, we can circle back to, send us your email, and we can get back to you later. And we will try to feed as many field as many questions and comments as we have time for. And as we're able to, we may try to combine comments that we get from people. It may not sound exactly like you wrote to us, but if people are giving us comments that are sort of in the same vein, we may try to bundle them together to try to hit the gist of what you're saying. So please bear with us, and thanks very much for being a part of the process and for helping us to understand what your concerns and questions are. And we'll do our best to try to have a nice conversation about the proposed research project for the road usage chart.